I don't know. There's a lot of reasons that systems fail, despite the fact that we've put in guardrails to prevent that from happening. You know, a judge that lets somebody out that's had a bunch of priors and then they go out and wind up killing a bunch of people.
So it raises a bigger question. If systems are designed to prevent failure, why do they still fail in ways that seem so obvious? And when something is clearly wrong, why doesn't somebody stop it?
Okay. There's a lot of places we can go with this one, Michael. You?
And Dan and I have some personal experience from the corporate world on this one too.
Yeah. You know, the first thing that comes to my mind is not a current event. And it might come to my mind because earlier today I was pushed a video on this. I didn't watch it, but it was in the feed. And that is the Space Shuttle Challenger disaster.
It's funny yeah, that's a great example.
All of the warning signs that were there, all of the recommendations that they don't launch, it's too cold, this won't work, we have a problem with these O-rings, all that kind of stuff. And yet the powers that be said, it'll be all right, and launched that sucker. And what was it, 76 seconds into flight?
Yeah.
What about the, I forget the name of the business, but the guy that was taking people down to see the Titanic?
Oh, yeah.
That was an epic failure.
Oh, yeah.
And everybody told him the way you are building this sub does not work. He was like an aerospace guy. So he's building planes. He's using these composites that were great for that. And everybody was telling him this is not going to hold.
Yep.
And it didn't.
Ego plays a huge role in some of these things for sure. In the case of the Challenger, I can't even, you know, as much as I've watched on that over the years and as much as that was discussed, I mean, some of that just came down to, I think there was almost this, well, I mean, my theory on this has always been that they just wanted to push that because of the PR aspect. Hey, we've got this school teacher, Krista McCall, you know, we've got, that's all part of it. You know, this is going to be great, the space program, because, you know, there was some loss of interest in the space program through the 80s. And I think that was part of the whole revitalizing the interest level in it. And certainly there was a lot of hype leading up to the launch of the Challenger. And then that happened. And then that was the end of the space program for over 2 years. You know, I don't know about you, Dan, but I listen, I was in school when that happened. It was roughly 9:30 in the morning or 9:40, something like that. We were right after the launch, then we were going to go to recess. And then that happened, and you know, a lot of kids in the school were watching that live. And then recess was very awkward. Like, we all sort of awkwardly left the room because after what happened, and we're kids, we didn't know exactly, you know, what had gone wrong. And then we came back later and found out, you know, yeah, indeed, they're all dead. And that was such a weird thing. But yeah, that's a great example, Dan. I have to say, that's not where I was going, but that's a fantastic example. I was just going to go with, you know, because over on the other channel, we watch Court, you know, and the justice system. I mean, there's how many things have gone wrong over there.
Yeah, a lot. This one just came to mind, though, as an example for two reasons. Number one, it's something that everybody knows. And it was just a systemic failure on all sides that was totally avoidable. And there were systems designed. I mean, all these different departments had to sign off on that launch happening. Yet under pressure, they all did, even though there was a lot that felt that this was a bad idea. So everybody knows it. But then as well, it was long enough ago that it proves this isn't just a recent issue.
No.
this is kind of always has been and probably always will be. Well, the players change, well, the technology changes. Um, we design things and we have these attitudes that should allow things to be foolproof, but yet they never are. And often it comes down to, you mentioned like ego, hubris, that sort of thing, but also greed. Greed's a big one that plays a role as well.
Right. Greed is the cause of a lot of these problems. I mean, it's also the reason that we have so many other issues. Again, I go back to the justice system. How do people like Elizabeth Holmes ever happen? How does a Bernie Madoff happen? How does this happens because those people were greedy, but also because other people were greedy to try and invest with them and not really pay attention to some of the obvious warning signs. And then the system on a broader basis fails, even though scams have happened time and time and time again, but there's always somebody. It's a cat and mouse game, right? You come up with a scam, someone comes up with a way to try and figure out how to beat that particular scam, but then somebody finds a hole in that system, and we just go round and round the mulberry bush.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, as long as there is a motivation, as long as for money or whatever, and sometimes it's not money, sometimes it's just simple ego. As long as there's that motivation to do something, people will find a way to exploit and to figure out a way around these fail safes.
Do you think, especially in some of the larger corporations or government systems, things like that, that even though there is a hierarchy and there's a lot of people that know about it, that especially where you are on the hierarchy, people are just afraid to say something because, they don't want to get in trouble. They don't want to be the whistleblower. They don't want to lose their jobs.
Yeah, the pressure from above definitely plays a role. Going back to the Challenger thing, it was lower level people who specialized in those boosters who were all saying we should not go, but they had all this pressure from above to ignore those thoughts and just push forward. In the corporate world, I can think of the example that you and I share, where there was a lot of stupid decisions coming from up above, and I always did my best to ignore the ones that made no sense, but there was so much pressure that you had to at least pretend to follow those and put on the dog and pony show when the bigwigs came through, so they believed that you were following their direction, even though the fact that you were not following their direction is what allowed you to be successful.
Yes.
Because they had no idea what they were doing.
No, they did not.
So there's definitely, at least historically, hubris, I think, is one of the biggest causes of these fail safes not working, and definitely a lack of listening. I think in the modern day, where we're going to run into a problem is as more and more lean on AI, and this is coming from a guy who embraces AI as a tool to get more done, not to answer all of life's problems. But that's how a lot of people are going to start embracing this, and I think it's going to be to their detriment. I mean, we've seen so many examples of people using AI to accomplish something, and it gives them all the wrong answers, and they fail at their task because of it.
There have been lawyers who have been disbarred from it because of it. Yeah.
Yeah, they've used it for like filing their legal briefs and making their arguments, and it's citing cases that don't even exist. And
Yeah.
they didn't bother
I
to
just read,
double-check it.
I just read an article like that, and that's such a side tangent to the conversation that we could go down. But I think this is all, again, this is a lot of this is just, again, it is just human ego, and it's just Sometimes maybe there is just some blissful ignorance too. There's a lot of that goes on, but it's sometimes it's born out of good intention. I don't know. There's a lot of reasons that systems fail, despite the fact that we've put in guardrails to prevent that from happening. A judge that lets somebody out that's had a bunch of priors, and then they go out and wind up killing a bunch of people. Now, how does this happen? How does somebody with 70 arrests in throughout their life get out and then go onto a train and do horrible things again? Or how does somebody go out and commit another crime? And again, sometimes it's like, well, we have this idea of, well, yeah, but we want to give this person an opportunity, or they've done these classes, they've completed this particular program, and by a statute it says we have to do this, even though all the warning signs say otherwise. There's just example after example of this. I don't know. I go to the justice system. Maybe it's because, again, of what we do with watching, court and just the justice system in general, but it's everywhere. Politics is probably the biggest example. Just government in general.
Yeah.
There's, in theory, if you look at the Constitution of the country, if you look at a lot of the laws, and yeah, we have too many of them, but in a way, you would think with all these laws, everything that we have codified, you would think that we would have a very smooth running system in this country and in many countries around the world, but especially here in the good old US of A. And yet, that has probably led to more problems. Because while everything theory is one thing. Like on paper, yeah, sure, it looks great, sounds great, everything's running wonderfully on paper, but then when it comes to in practice, yeah, again, it's the greed, it's the ego, it's the tribal politics aspect of it. It's that struggle for power. It's all of that leads to these systems ultimately either being ignored, that's why they fail, or it's because people find a way around it for their own ends. That's so, this is, I get the question is, and maybe that's not where we should go with, but I mean, it kind of makes you wonder, how do you
asking the questions, by the way.
Yeah. Well, how do you, yeah, but how do you fix it? I mean, that's the logical part of this discussion is, how do we fix it?
Well, I was just thinking about that, and I don't know that the answer is fix it. Ellie is attacking a bug on the other side of the window here.
She's just like jumping at the window. Anyway.
Yeah. So if we go offline, it's because she bounced back onto a computer. No, I think that the answer isn't so much fixing it as it's adjusting and maintaining it. And that does not happen either. Any system that you put in place, no matter what it is, has to constantly be followed up with. It's not just good enough to put in a system and say, we're done.
Yes.
I mean, look at the fact that here on ITB, we took off a week and a half so that we could make some adjustments behind the scenes so the show would run better. But even then, and there are some things that are set up better for us now. It will do better. However,
even then the cat.
But yeah, even then the cat messed up the intro. So I got to figure out if there's a better way to do the intro. So if the cat steps on the computer, we don't have this problem again. But I guess my point is that it's not just good enough to put something in place. You have to put it in place, and then you have to evaluate it and say, okay, where are the holes? What's good and what's bad? What do we need to adjust? Right. How can people get around it? How will this possibly collapse? And then continue to shore it up. But that's where laziness kicks in, isn't it?
I was just going to say, this is like pattern recognition, and the fact you pointed out the Apollo mission, that is proof that this isn't new. So people generally are smart, this should be like a known quantity.
Well, I will say it was Challenger, but you
Challenger,
you
sorry.
said Apollo, and that's actually a good example of where they found a hole in the system and actually patched it up. Apollo 1, the astronauts were killed on the test pad because it was a completely oxygen-rich environment, and there was a spark and it started a fire.
Yep.
So they halted the whole thing, and they're like, all right, we have to figure out how to shore this up. And they took the time to do it so that they wouldn't have that accident again. That's actually a good example of taking your systems and refining them based on what you've learned. But so often that doesn't happen, and it especially doesn't happen with government. I mean, they put something in place and they're like, all right, we're done.
Yeah, I mean, they'll
build a whole other project on top of that one to correct the errors of the old one, but not eliminate the old one.
Yes.
So then it just layers bureaucracy.
I was just going to ask if, for both of you, if you think is it more system failure, like design flaws, or is it actually human nature that is the bigger problem here?
For me, human nature. Because human nature is not only is the human nature to like get around stuff to circumvent the system, but it's also human nature, as I was just discussing, to be lazy enough to not improve the system, to not find out its flaws and shore them up properly. I don't know. You, Michael?
Yeah, I would say it's human nature because we're really good at building systems. We build some amazing systems. Again, on paper, a lot of stuff that we build sounds fantastic. It sounds like it's going to run perfectly well. And even the holes that we find in it, we go, okay, well, this is how we fix that. Neat. But then in practice, well, people find a way to enrich themselves or a means to their own ends or whatever the case, or because humans are flawed and, they may come up with systems that work, but because people are flawed, those systems don't work as they are intended, or whatever, a number of factors. So yeah, I think it's just human nature that causes all of this.
Yeah,
I mean, some systems are built terribly. I'm not saying that every one is great, but yeah, I would just say generally it's human nature.
Well, the ones that aren't built great are probably human nature too, because that's laziness in the build, isn't it?
Yeah.
Laziness, or it's lack of research.
Laziness, or lack of research, or again, well-intentioned, but probably being naive. I mean, there's that too. Like sometimes, things are done in a way where it's more like, well, we hope this works because it would be great if it did. Well, yeah, it would, but that's building on hopium is going to you're going to lead to disappointment. That's the problem. The radio business is a prime example, or the broadcast industry in general is built on a lot of hopium and ego, and there's just so many things, and not listening to people that have more wisdom. And bureaucracy. It's kind of like a mini version of the government, the broadcast is.
I think a lot of companies kind of feel that way.
Yeah, I mean, it's true for a lot of big corporations. They have their own guys that'll tell you how great it is. And again, broadcast biz is a fantastic, and I'll say radio in general. Radio business is a fine example where people within it, it's sort of this self-congratulatory sort of, no, everything is going fine here. If you look at our average, our TTSLs, our total time spent listening, our AQHs, and our, everything is, and our cumes, they love that. Our cumes are cumulative. Our cubes are still doing great here in the radio biz. Yeah, but the average age of the person that listens to the radio is like 60 now. Oh, stop it. And you try to just talk logic to these people, and it's amazing. You'll say to them, hey man, go to a high school, ask them what radio station they listen to. even go, talk to people in Gen Z,
What's a radio?
Gen Alpha. Yeah, they'll be like, "Oh, you mean that thing my grandpa listens to?" Like, they don't. Young people don't listen to and people like me tried to tell these guys 25 years ago what the future was going to look like, and they wouldn't listen. We wanted, you have to build on content, and they're like, nah. And so they wanted to do this cookie cutter homogenized thing where one station, Kiss FM in one market sounds like Kiss FM in another market, and we have the same dumb shows, and we're going to play the same 32 songs. And it's just, it's like, look, man, you've got other media that's coming online now. You've got satellite radio. You've got people with their own personal, these new iPods. This is in the early 2000s. This is going to ultimately cost you. Oh, no, it's not. People are still going to tune in. See, look at our cubes. Our TTSLs are still great. I'm like, all right, man. And yeah, 25 years later, it is an industry. I mean, it's like the newspaper biz. It'll never be totally dead, but it's just always going to be a shadow of its former self.
So just in summary, what you're saying, Michael, is that the best thing that we can do for this show is to make a phone call to 550 KFYI and see if they'll simulcast us. And that will be our road to success.
Yes. There's a great example locally. Yes.
Channel.
All these stations,
I feel bad
they
insulting them, but they're not listening. So
yeah. Well, and no one's listening to them that's, under 70. No. You talk about a fall from grace, a station, a once mighty station in this market, a mighty talk station in this market that started just over 40 years ago, and was the home of many famous broadcasters or well-known local and national talents that came out of there. Talent might be a loose word for some of the people, but they had successful careers. And over time, again, ego and hubris, people not listening to guys like me, and I don't want to give myself too much credit. There was a lot of other people that saw the tea leaves, read the tea leaves, and said, hey, you got to do something or else. But they're like, nah, man, AM radio is going to be around forever. It's going to be relevant for the rest of our lives. Yeah.
They probably said the same thing about ham radio too.
Right up until Rush Limbaugh died, and then nobody cared about AM radio after that because he was the only glue really holding it.
I mean, that was like the last bastion. And even true. That, the audience for Rush was an audience that started listening to him in 1988.
Yep.
And so by the time he died, 2021, those people had aged, 32, 33 years. And so now those people that started out as, 25-year-olds were getting up towards 60. And that's the problem is, you need to replace, this is just a fact. You have to replace the audience. If you don't build a newer, younger audience, your time is limited.
And that's why we try to appeal to all kinds here.
Mainstream media is the one that's feeling it right now.
That's why we're 420 friendly. Brah. Yeah, brah. It's fire, brah.
All right. On that note,
well, we only went over by 5 minutes.
Systems and safeguards don't work and don't do radio. Okay.
Hey, thanks for watching. In the Blind is a news show for Mike and me, and we'd really love it if you could hit the subscribe button, do a thumbs up, leave a comment. All of those things really help this channel get found by other people, so we'd really appreciate the support. Thanks so much.